The alien marketplace was alive with noise, filled with voices shouting, merchants calling, and footsteps echoing across the stone ground. But in the center of the square, all sounds mixed into something cruel. A cruel spectacle for all to see. A young alien girl stood there, her body trembling under the eyes of the crowd. Her fine robes had been torn away by those who hated her, leaving her skin bare to the cold air and the sharp stares. Pieces of garbage were being thrown at her, rotten fruit, broken scraps, and dirty cloth. The stench clung to her as laughter rose like fire around her. Her silver eyes looked down, refusing to meet their mocking gaze. Every second felt like a knife cutting into her dignity. She had been a daughter of status once, but now she was reduced to nothing more than entertainment for the mob. Every laugh, every cruel word made her feel smaller. Weaker, the crowd enjoyed her suffering. Their voices sharp, some shouted insults. Others shouted lies about her family, and some only laughed with joy. Their faces twisted with ugly amusement. No one offered help. No one spoke against it, to them. Her pain was just a show, a cruel game. She tried to wrap her arms around herself for comfort, to hide her body, but her arms were thin and weak. Her shame could not be hidden. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But the tears only made them laugh louder. "Look at her cry," one alien shouted. "She thought she was above us. Now she is nothing." More garbage flew, hitting her arms, her legs, her hair. The weight of humiliation was worse than the weight of the trash. She felt her chest tighten, her voice break, but she dared not scream. She knew if she screamed, they would enjoy it even more. So she stayed silent, swallowing her cries like bitter poison. The air grew thick with cruelty. The smell of rotting food mixed with dust. The square was no longer a place of trade. It had become a theater of suffering. And she was forced to play the role of the broken girl. But in the far edge of the crowd, someone different stood watching. A figure not laughing, not mocking, a human soldier. His uniform marked him as foreign. His eyes carried no joy in her pain. His jaw was tight. His hands clenched behind his back. He stood still while the others shouted and cheered. He was not blind to what was happening. Every insult he heard, every piece of garbage thrown, every cruel laugh twisted something inside him. He had seen cruelty in wars. He had seen death and blood. But this cruelty was different. It was slow. It was cold. It was meant only to destroy someone's spirit. The alien girl did not notice him at first, her eyes too heavy with shame, her head bowed to the ground. But he noticed her trembling hands, her weak shoulders, the way she clung to what little strength she had left, and something stirred in him. The crowd's noise grew louder. Some shouted, "Throw more." Others said, "She deserves worse." Their cruelty had no limit, no boundary. It was as if the more they mocked, the stronger they felt. The human soldier felt his chest burn with anger, his breath deep and heavy. But still, he did not move. Why did he not move? He asked himself. Why stand still while one girl suffered? He knew the answer, because one act of kindness in front of a mob could turn the mob against him. Because helping her could mean danger for himself. Yet he also knew that staying silent made him no different from them. His eyes narrowed, and the girl finally raised her gaze, just for a moment, her silver eyes meeting his. It was brief, but powerful. She expected to see mockery, but what she saw in him was not laughter, not hatred, but something else, a spark of humanity. Her lips trembled, her body shook. She turned her face away quickly. Unable to believe it, was it real? Did a human soldier, a stranger, truly see her pain? The crowd kept mocking, but inside her heart, a small whisper began. Maybe not all were cruel. Maybe not all wanted her destroyed. The human soldier's silence was heavy. His presence felt different from the rest, though he did nothing yet. The possibility hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. What would he do? Would he turn away, like all others, or would he step forward into danger? The marketplace was blind to the choice he carried. The crowd saw him only as another watcher, another figure in the sea of cruelty. But the girl's eyes knew better. Her heart waited. Her spirit clung to the thin thread of hope as the rotten food struck her again, as her shame deepened. The question grew louder inside her mind: would anyone, even one soul, step forward? Or would this cruel spectacle become the last memory of her dignity? And as the human soldier's fingers slowly moved toward his coat, the answer began to form, a spark of defiance against the cruelty of many. A single human heart standing against. The laughter of the mob, the cruel spectacle, was not yet over. But something was about to change, something the crowd did not expect, and something the girl could not yet believe. The marketplace had grown restless. The laughter and jeering of the crowd rolled like thunder. The alien girl stood broken, her body wrapped only in shame, her silver eyes dull with despair. Yet something shifted in the air, a silence hidden within the noise, a presence that the mob had not yet noticed. The human soldier stepped closer, not rushing, not pushing. His boots striking the ground with calm rhythm. He did not speak, he did not raise his weapon. His silence was heavy, and that silence began to bite into the voices of the cruel mob. The alien girl lifted her eyes once more. She saw him moving through the crowd. Her heart jumped in confusion. Was he coming to mock her as well? Or was this something else? His expression gave no answer. His jaw was tight, his gaze sharp and steady. She had never seen a human before in this place, and yet here he was. The crowd noticed him now. Some aliens sneered, others muttered. They whispered that humans should stay out of alien matters. One laughed and shouted, "Look, another spectator? Let him see her shame." But the human did not laugh. His silence cut sharper than their insults. Every step brought him closer, until he stood at the edge of the circle. The girl trembled as she watched him, her breath shallow, the world around her still a blur of mockery and trash. But his eyes were different. They held no cruelty, no joy in her pain. Instead, they carried something she did not understand. A weight, a fire. The mob tested him. One alien shoved against his arm. Another spat near his boots. They expected him to react with anger or retreat with fear. But the human did neither. He simply stood, still as stone, his silence louder than any shout. The alien girl's chest tightened. She could not look away, her mind filled with questions. Why was he here? Why was he watching her? Why did he stand so still while the crowd burned with cruelty? Her lips parted as if to whisper, but no sound came. Her throat too tight with fear and disbelief. The human's gaze did not leave her. He studied her trembling shoulders, her tear-stained face, her shame covered in dirt and garbage. And something inside him decided. His silence had been long enough. Now his silence would become action. Slowly, almost carefully, he reached up to his own shoulders. His fingers tugged at the heavy coat that marked him as a soldier, a coat lined with fabric that carried the weight of his duty and his identity. The crowd fell quieter, their laughter stuttering as they saw what he was doing. The girl's eyes widened, her breath caught. She thought for a moment he might strike her with the coat, or mock her with it. But then he stepped forward, just one step, and in a single motion, he draped the coat around her bare shoulders. The crowd gasped. Their cruel laughter broke into shock. The weight of the coat pressed against her thin frame, but it was not heavy with shame. It was heavy with warmth, heavy with dignity. The girl clutched it tightly, her trembling fingers grasping the fabric as if it were life itself. Her heart raced, her mind swirled. She whispered without meaning to. Why? Her voice weak, nearly Lost in the crowd's noise, her silver eyes filled with disbelief. No one had ever done this for her. No one had ever given her even the smallest kindness. Yet this human had given her more than kindness. He had given her back her dignity. The mob erupted in anger. Their shock turned to fury. "Traitor!" one shouted. "Weak human!" another yelled. Some threw more garbage, but this time the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the mob. His silence was gone. Now his presence roared louder than their cruelty. The girl stared at his back, broad and unshaken, his stance steady. Her hands tightened on the coat, her chest filled with something she had not felt in so long. Hope, fragile yet burning. The aliens pushed again. Their insults sharp, but the human stood tall, his silence a wall. His calm defiance a weapon sharper than any blade. The mob grew restless, their courage fading against his unshaken figure. They could not understand why one man stood for one girl, yet they felt the strength. In him, a strength none of them could break. The girl's tears fell again, but these tears were different. Not only of shame, but of release. Her spirit felt a spark returning. The coat smelled of dust, of leather, of the human himself, and it wrapped her not only in fabric, but in protection, in dignity. The mob did not know what to do. Some shouted louder, some stepped back. The cruel spectacle had shifted, and the center of it was no longer her shame. It was the human's defiance. She looked up at him, her voice trembling as she whispered again, "Why?" This time he heard, his head tilted slightly, but his gaze did not move from the crowd. His answer was simple, calm and strong, "Because no one deserves this." Her breath caught, her heart shook. She pressed the coat tighter against her body, the warmth spreading deeper than the fabric, reaching her spirit. The mob had tried to break her, but now they faced something different, something stronger. The silence of one human soldier had turned into defiance, and the cruel spectacle was no longer theirs to control. The heavy coat settled over her shoulders, its fabric rough yet warm. The alien girl froze, unable to understand what had just happened. For so long she had felt nothing but coldness from others, cold words, cold laughter, cold cruelty. Yet this one act from the human soldier burned like fire against her skin. Not painful fire, but fire that reminded her she was still alive. The crowd stood stunned, their laughter cut short. No one had expected it to cover her, to give her dignity in front of all of them. It was unthinkable. Many muttered in anger. Some spat on the ground, but none could hide the truth that the moment had shaken them. The girl's trembling hands rose slowly, her thin fingers clutching the edges of the coat. She pulled it tighter around herself, as if afraid someone might rip it away. Her chest rose and fell with shaky breaths, her silver eyes glistening with tears that no longer felt like weakness. They were something else. For the first time since her humiliation began, she felt a barrier between herself and the cruelty of the world. The coat was not only fabric, it was a shield. It was dignity returned to her. And though she still shook, though her shame still burned in her heart, she now carried a piece of hope. The human soldier stood firm in front of her, his broad back facing the mob, his silence a wall between her and them. The crowd shouted louder now, insult after insult, their voices sharper with anger. "Traitor!" they screamed. "He shames us!" But the soldier did not answer. His silence was heavier than their rage. The alien girl looked up at him, her lips parted, her voice trembling as she whispered again. "Why?" It was a fragile word, barely carried by the air, but he heard it. He tilted his head slightly, though his eyes never left the mob. His voice finally broke the silence, calm and steady. "Because no one deserves this." Her chest tightened, her heart skipped. She clutched the coat tighter. Her tears fell again, but these tears felt different, softer, lighter. They carried relief. She had thought she was nothing, that no one would ever see her as worthy, yet this human had seen her. Not as trash, not as a joke, but as someone worth protecting. The mob grew restless, their cruelty shaken. Some stepped forward, throwing garbage again, but the human raised one hand, not to strike, only to hold them back. His calm eyes burned with quiet fire, the kind of fire that told the crowd he would not step aside. His silence and stillness carried more strength than any weapon. The girl's eyes followed his every move, her thoughts racing. Who was he? Why risk himself for her? He owed her nothing. They were not of the same kind. Their worlds were different. Yet he had given her what her own people had torn away. Dignity. The coat was too large for her, the sleeves falling past her hands, the edges dragging near the ground. Yet she held it as if it were the finest robe. Her back straightened a little, her shame softened by the warmth. She took a breath, and for the first time since the cruel spectacle began, she dared to lift her head and look at the crowd. Her silver eyes, though still wet with tears, carried a spark. The aliens who had thrown garbage at her now saw not only a broken girl, but a girl covered, protected, defended. Their laughter stumbled, their cruelty cracked. The human's presence had changed the air. The cruel spectacle no longer belonged to the mob. It belonged to the silence of one man and the dignity he had returned to one girl. The girl felt her spirit stir, a quiet voice inside, whispering that maybe she was not as weak as they made her believe. Maybe she was not as worthless as they claimed. She wrapped herself tighter in the coat and whispered softly, almost only to herself, "Thank you." The soldier did not turn, but his shoulders shifted slightly, as if he had heard. His silence remained, but his stance told her everything. He would not let them harm her again. The mob tried again to shout, tried again to laugh. But their cruelty rang hollow now, their power fading. The spectacle had turned against them. The more they raged, the stronger his silence grew, and the stronger her spirit felt. The girl knew the coat did not erase her shame, did not erase the cruelty she had faced, but it gave her strength to endure. It gave her dignity in a place where none had left. She pressed her cheek against the rough fabric, breathing in the scent of leather, dust, and warmth. And for the first time, she felt safe. The crowd still swirled with anger, but none dared. Stepped closer. The soldier's eyes burned too sharp, his presence too strong. The girl stayed behind him, her fragile body shielded by his figure and by the coat that now belonged to her. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the cruel marketplace grew uneasy. No longer loud with joy, but heavy with shame. The mob that had enjoyed her pain now struggled to look at her, for they no longer saw only a broken alien girl. They saw someone standing with dignity. The coat was more than fabric. It was defiance. It was kindness. It was the beginning of something that none of them could destroy. The girl's heart whispered again, "Why me?" But for the first time, she did not feel empty when asking. She felt hope that maybe an answer would come. And as the human soldier stood tall, silent, unmoving, his coat around her shoulders, the cruel spectacle began to fade, replaced. But something the girl would never forget. The coat of dignity had changed everything. The marketplace shifted like a storm changing its winds. The mob that had once laughed now burned with anger. The human's act of kindness had cut into their cruelty. And cruelty does not like to be challenged. The coat around the alien girl's shoulders was more than cloth. It was defiance, and the crowd could not accept it. "Traitor," one voice shouted sharp and loud. Others joined, their anger spilling over. "He protects the weak. He shames us all." The voices rose higher, echoing through the square. No longer laughter, no longer mockery, but rage. The human soldier stood tall, his eyes steady, his silence like steel. Yet his silence was no longer empty. It spoke louder than words. It told the mob that he would not move, that their cruelty had met a wall it could not break. The alien girl pressed the coat tighter to her chest, her silver eyes wide, her heart racing. She had been the center of their hatred. But now the fire of their rage turned toward the human. Fear rushed through her. What if they attacked him? What if they tore him apart as they had tried to tear her spirit apart? The mob pushed closer, some throwing scraps, some shaking fists. The air filled with shouts and anger. One alien stepped forward and spat at the ground near the soldiers. Boots, waiting for him to react, but he did not. His calm burned hotter than any anger, his silence stronger than their noise. "Step aside, human," one alien snarled. "She deserves what we gave her," another added. "Do not shame yourself by standing with her." But the soldier, finally, spoke, his voice calm, deep, and heavy. "No one touches her again." The words dropped like stone into the crowd, heavy, unshakable. The aliens froze for a moment. Not used to being challenged, the marketplace went quiet before rage roared again. They did not expect a human to speak with such strength. The girl's breath caught, her eyes filled with tears again. Not of shame, but of shock. No one had ever said such words for her. No one had ever drawn a line in the sand for her sake. She whispered softly, "Why does he fight for me?" The question rang inside her heart. The mob tried to laugh at his words, tried to mock his courage, but their voices cracked. They felt something they had not felt before. Fear, not of violence. For he had not drawn a weapon, but of his presence. His strength without anger, his dignity that shamed their cruelty. The aliens closer to the front stepped back, unsure, while others pushed forward, anger growing sharper. The human soldier's hand rested near his weapon, not to threaten, but to remind them. His eyes burned like fire, calm yet unshaken. The girl clutched the coat and pressed closer to him, her body trembling, her spirit caught between fear and wonder. Never had anyone shielded her. Never had anyone dared to face the mob for her sake. Yet this human did. The crowd turned louder. Some shouted that the human was weak. Others shouted that he was dangerous, but their unity was cracking. Some looked at each other with doubt. Their anger was strong, but their courage was fading. You cannot fight them all, but he did not answer. His silence was answer enough. He would not let them through. Not while he still stood. The mob surged again. Yet when they came too close, the soldier's sharp gaze stopped them. It was not the threat of his weapon, but the weight of his will. The crowd realized he was not afraid. And fearless men are harder to break than steel. The girl's spirit stirred. She had always been told she was weak, always told she was alone. Yet here she was, shielded by a stranger. By a human, no less. His coat gave her warmth, but his defiance gave her something more. Hope. The mob roared one last time, their voices clashing against the silence of the soldier. But their noise no longer held power. One by one, some began to step back. Some lowered their eyes. The cruel spectacle had shifted fully. No longer was she the object of their laughter. Now they were the ones exposed. Their cruelty laid bare in the face of one man's courage. The girl felt her heart beat stronger, her shame still heavy, but no longer crushing her. She whispered again, though her voice was only for herself. Maybe not all are cruel. Her silver eyes locked on the human's back, and for the first time in so long, she felt safe enough to breathe. The marketplace that had been filled with joy in her pain now stood divided. Anger burned, but doubt spread. They had turned against the human, but the human had not turned away. He stood, silent yet unbroken. And in that silence, the crowd felt smaller, weaker. The alien girl pressed her cheek against the coat, her voice too soft for anyone but her heart to hear. "Thank you." Her tears fell again, but these were tears of release, tears of dignity. The mob could not take that away anymore. The crowd turned, but in that turning, they had already lost. The human's defiance had broken their cruelty. His coat had restored her dignity. And together they had shifted the power of the square. The cruel spectacle had ended, and a new story had begun. The square had gone from laughter to rage, from cruel amusement to uneasy silence. But the human soldier still stood, tall and unbroken. The alien girl stayed close behind him, clutching the heavy coat tighter around her thin shoulders, her heart pounding with fear and hope mixed together. The mob was restless. Their anger clashed with hesitation. They had never been challenged before. Their cruelty had always been easy. Yet now one man stood in their way, not shouting, not threatening, only standing with a calm strength that cut deeper than any blade. The soldier's silence pressed heavier with each passing second. Until one alien could not take it, he pushed forward, his voice sharp. "Move aside. Human, she is nothing. Let us finish what we began." His words were met with cheers from a few in the crowd. But the sound rang weaker than before. The soldier raised his head slowly, his eyes like steel, his voice calm but firm. "No one touches her again." The words struck the mob like thunder. Simple words, yet carrying the weight of truth. The kind of truth that made even the boldest hesitate. The alien girl gasped softly at his words, her silver eyes wide. She had never heard anyone speak for her, never heard anyone take her side. "Against many," she whispered under her breath. "Why does he protect me?" Her voice too quiet for anyone but herself to hear. Another alien stepped forward, taller and broader, his sneer cruel. "You think you can stand against all of us, human?" he mocked. "You are only one. We are many." The mob cheered louder, finding courage in his words. The human soldier did not flinch. He did not step back. His hand rested calmly near his weapon, but he did not draw it. His silence and his gaze were his weapons, his defiance stronger than any threat. "One is enough," he replied, his voice steady. The girl's chest tightened, her breath caught. Those 3 words struck her heart like lightning. One is enough. One was enough to stop her humiliation. One was enough to shield her. One was enough to give her back the dignity she had lost. The mob shouted again, some louder, some angrier. But their courage shook. Their anger felt hollow. The soldier's defiance was like a wall they could not climb. His calm burned their cruelty into shame. The aliens closest to him hesitated, their feet shifting, their hands shaking. They wanted to push forward, but his steady eyes froze them in place. It was not his strength of body that held them. It was his strength of spirit, the unbreakable will that stood tall when others would fall. The girl stayed pressed close to his back, the coat wrapped tight around her. She whispered again, "You cannot fight them all," her voice weak. But deep inside, she wondered if maybe he truly could. The mob tried to surge again, their voices a wave of anger, yet when they came too close, the human stepped forward, his stance unshaken. The air itself felt heavier around him. The aliens froze again, their courage breaking like glass. "Go on then," he said firmly. His eyes locked on them. "Try." His voice was not loud, but it carried like a blade through the crowd, his defiance daring them, and they faltered. The girl's tears fell again, but she did not look down this time. She lifted her head, her silver eyes shining. She looked at the mob and saw them step back, saw them hesitate, saw them afraid of the human who would not bend. Her spirit stirred. For the first time, she felt that maybe she was not weak, not worthless. Maybe she was something more. The mob grew divided, some shouting for action, others whispering to leave. Anger fought with doubt, cruelty fought with fear. Their unity cracked with every heartbeat. The soldier stood silent again, his defiance complete, his calm gaze stronger than their rage. The aliens realized they could throw garbage. They could shout insults, but they could not move him. They could not break him. The girl whispered softly, her voice trembling but filled with wonder. "He stands for me." She pressed the coat tighter, her tears falling freely now, no longer of shame, but of something she could not name. Something that burned warm in her heart. The mob pushed one last time, their voices clashing against his silence, but their rage no longer carried weight. The cruel spectacle had turned. The humans. Defiance had stolen their power. Step by step, some began to retreat, their eyes down, their voices fading. They knew they could not win against one man who refused to bend. Their cruelty was strong only when unchallenged, but against defiance it crumbled. The girl felt her spirit rising, her dignity no longer fully broken. She looked at the human, at his back, strong and steady, and whispered one more time, "Thank you." Her words carried more strength now, her heart beating with new life. The mob had turned, their anger spent, their cruelty broken. The human had faced them all and stood tall, and in his defiance, he had given her something she thought she would never feel again. Hope. The cruel spectacle was over, and in its place stood the unshaken figure of one human soldier and the fragile but growing spirit of one alien girl. Together, they had changed everything. The air in the marketplace grew heavy, the voices of the mob slowly fading into uneasy whispers. Their cruelty no longer sharp, their rage no longer united. The human soldier had not struck them, had not shouted, yet his calm defiance had broken them. His silence had spoken louder than their noise. The alien girl stood close behind him, still wrapped in his heavy coat, her body trembling, but her heart burning with something new. Her silver eyes blinked against the tears that kept falling. But now those tears were not shame alone. They were mixed with wonder, with hope, with disbelief that someone had truly stood for her. The crowd began to step back, their courage scattered like dust in the wind. They whispered to one another, some angry, some ashamed, some simply silent. No one dared to push forward again. The cruel game they had played had ended, and none of them wanted to be the one to face the human's gaze. The soldier lowered his hand slowly, his eyes still sharp, his stance still strong. He knew the mob was broken, but he did not relax. Not yet. His silence still guarded the girl behind him. His calm still held the square in its grip. The girl clutched the coat tighter and whispered softly, "Why?" Her voice trembling, though he had already answered once. She could not stop asking. Why would he risk himself? Why would he protect her? She was nothing to him. She was no soldier, no ally, only a broken girl the crowd had cast aside. This time he turned slightly, just enough for his words to reach her. "Because you deserve better." His voice steady, his tone heavy with truth. Not kindness spoken to comfort, but conviction spoken like stone. Her silver eyes widened, her breath caught. She pressed her hand against her mouth to hold back a sob. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever looked at her and said she deserved anything but pain. Her heart shook, her spirit trembling under the weight of those simple words. The mob heard them too, the words echoing across the square, and for the first time, shame crept into their faces. Shame they had not felt before, because one human had reminded them of something they had long forgotten. Dignity. The girl's back straightened a little, her trembling slowed. She felt the coat not as borrowed, but as her own now. Not only fabric, but a gift of respect. She looked up, her silver eyes brighter, and for the first time since the cruel spectacle began, she did not look down in defeat. The soldier stood calm, unshaken, and in that calmness, the crowd saw what they had lost. The strength of their cruelty had vanished. The strength of his respect remained. One alien muttered, "Why does a human care?" Another whispered, "Maybe she did not deserve this." Voices that had once been cruel, now cracked with doubt. They avoided each other's eyes, their unity broken. The girl took a small step forward, her voice weak but steady. "You did not have to help me," she whispered to the soldier, her words meant only for him, yet they carried weight. She was not used to speaking her truth, not used to being heard, but now her words did not vanish. They found him. The soldier turned his head slightly, his eyes calm. "I could not stand by," he replied, his voice quiet yet unshakable. Her lips parted, her breath shaky. She pressed the coat tighter to herself. His words sank deep into her heart, deeper than any kindness she had ever known. The mob was no longer laughing, no longer shouting. Their eyes shifted, some ashamed, some angry at themselves, others too proud to admit their cruelty, but all of them silent now. The girl felt the change. She felt the weight of their stares. But this time, it was different. She was not bare. She was not weak. She was wrapped in the coat, wrapped in dignity, wrapped in respect. Her spirit whispered inside her heart, "I am not nothing." The thought shocked her, but it felt true. Her lips trembled as she repeated it in silence. "I am not nothing." The soldier stood still, his gaze sweeping the crowd, his silence no longer defiance alone, but protection. His strength had forced them back, but his respect had done more. It had lifted her. It had given her something she thought was lost forever. Worth. The girl stepped closer to him, her voice soft, almost a whisper carried by the wind. "Thank you." This time it was not just gratitude for protection, but gratitude for being seen, for being respected. The soldier did not answer with words. He only gave the faintest nod. A gesture small but heavy with meaning. The crowd began to disperse, one by one. Their shame too heavy to stay, their cruelty exposed. They left with voices low, their power gone. The marketplace grew quieter. The noise of trade and laughter had vanished. What remained was the echo of defiance, the memory of one act of respect. That changed everything. The girl's silver eyes glistened as she looked at the human, her voice trembling but steady. "You gave me back what they took," she whispered, her words breaking with emotion. He looked at her, his eyes calm, his voice steady. "No one can take it forever." Her heart shook, her spirit soared. The coat wrapped her, not only in warmth, but in the respect she thought she would never feel again. The cruel spectacle was gone, and in its place stood something stronger. A bond formed not from power, but from respect. A bond that neither the mob nor the world could break. Respect had been earned, and in that respect, a new story was born. Asterisk, the marketplace that once burned with cruel laughter now stood in uneasy silence. The crowd had scattered, their courage broken, their voices gone. Only dust and the echo of their shame remained. In the center of it all stood the human soldier, tall and calm, his coat wrapped around the alien girl who had once been left bare. She stayed close behind him, her body still trembling, but her heart changed. Her silver eyes lifted from the ground for the first time. Her spirit no longer crushed. The coat was warm, but the warmth inside her chest came not from fabric. It came from what he had given her: dignity, respect, and something more. The soldier turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers for the first time without the barrier of the mob. His face was calm, steady, his voice low but strong. "You are safe now." Her lips trembled, her voice weak but filled with emotion. Why would you do this for me?" The question had burned in her heart from the moment he stepped forward. She needed to understand. He looked at her, his gaze heavy with truth. "Because no one deserves to be treated like you were." His words simple, yet they carried the weight of a lifetime, the kind of truth that could not be broken. Her tears fell again, but they were not only of pain now. They were of release, of gratitude. She clutched the coat tighter, whispering softly, "I thought I was nothing." The soldier shook his head, his voice calm. "You are not nothing. You were never nothing." His words struck her deeper than any blade could. Her chest shook, her spirit stirred. She had been told all her life she was worthless. Yet here he stood, a stranger, telling her she was more. The girl's silver eyes glistened, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Then who am I?" He gave her no grand answer. No long speech, he only said, "You are someone worth protecting." Her knees weakened, her heart surged. She pressed her hand to her mouth to hold back the sobs. Those words were more powerful than any weapon, stronger than any shield. They gave her something she had thought lost forever. Worth. The marketplace was nearly empty now. Only a few eyes lingered in the shadows. But even those eyes carried no more cruelty, only silence. The spectacle was over. Its power destroyed. The girl took a step closer to him, her voice trembling but steady. "I do not even know your name." He looked at her, his expression calm. "Names do not matter now," he said quietly. "What matters is that you walk forward. Not broken, not ashamed." Her breath caught. She pressed the coat tighter. His words filled her heart with warmth she could not explain. She whispered again, "Then walk with me." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. The smallest gesture, yet it felt larger than the world. They began to walk, step by step out of the square. Her bare feet still touched the cold ground, but the coat shielded her from the eyes that once burned her. The human walked beside her, steady, silent, but his presence a shield stronger than any armor. As they passed the broken stalls and empty stones, she felt every step change her. She was not the girl who had been mocked anymore. She was not the girl who had been left unclothed and humiliated. She was the girl who had been covered, defended, respected. Her heart whispered, "Maybe I am more than they said. Maybe I am more than they believed." She dared to look at him. The human soldier walking with calm strength. And for the first time she allowed herself to smile. Small, fragile, but real, he noticed. Though he did not speak, his silence was answer enough. The bond between them was not of blood, not of world, not of language. It was forged in defiance, in respect, in the simple act of one man standing against many. It was fragile, yet unbreakable. The girl whispered softly, her voice like wind, "I thought I was alone." The soldier finally answered, his voice steady, "You are not alone anymore." Her silver eyes filled again, her spirit trembling but alive. Those words sealed the bond between them, not of master and servant, not of hero and victim, but of two souls who had faced cruelty and chosen dignity instead. They left the marketplace together, the cruel spectacle fading into memory, but the bond forged in that moment would never fade. It was more than kindness, more than defiance. It was a promise, unspoken yet true. The alien girl had been left unclothed and pelted with garbage, humiliated and broken, but the human had covered her with his coat, shielded her with his presence, and given her back her worth. Her life would never be the same again. His life too had changed. For in that moment he had not only defended her, he had reminded himself what it meant to be human. Together they walked away, two figures side by side, a bond forged in dignity, a bond that would outlive the cruelty of the crowd, a bond that would echo beyond the marketplace. The bond was forged, and it would never break.